Welcome to Studio 51. I'm Dominique Stem.
And I'm Caitlin Wilson. Studio 51 is a weekly news magazine produced by Loyola University students in Chicago. Our name is Studio 51 because we are located at 51 East Pearson in this beautiful street studio in downtown Chicago.
We've got a great show for you. A look at the top news stories with a special report on the new Pope, and an interesting look at the 2-year anniversary of the Japanese tsunami.
Our foodie this week is my co-anchor Dominique, taking a look at a restaurant just around the block. We've got some health tips and sports in 51 seconds, including the latest rant from our sports superfan. We'll also be gearing up for St. Patty's Day.
But first, let's get a news roundup from Studio 51's Newsbeat reporter, Jason Weeder.
Thanks, ladies. Well, it's official. A new pope has been chosen. Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio of Argentina was elected Wednesday around 1 p.m. Chicago time. It took cardinals only a day and a half to select the successor to the Pope, Benedict XVI. Bergoglio is not only the first pope from Latin America, but also the first Jesuit to be elected. He is also the first to choose the name Francis after St. Francis Assisi, the 13th century Italian preacher. As many of you know, Loyola is a Jesuit institution, so many people here are celebrating, but are also surprised with the selection of a Jesuit as pope. Studio 51 will focus on this milestone in an in-depth report later on in the show. Here in Chicago, people are still mourning the tragic shooting death of 6-month-old Janila Watkins. The infant was killed in what police believe was a gang-related shooting. Police theorize the father, Jonathan Watkins, was the target. The family has announced funeral services for baby Janila on Tuesday. Here's something new for CTA riders. A new payment system for rapid transit in Chicago is set to go in effect soon. Starting this summer, the Venture card will debut on the CTA. Venture will replace the current fare cards, and rates will remain the same on trains and buses. But riders should expect to pay 50 cents more for the new card if they choose to pay with cash. One other note, when the new system is in place, commuters will also be able to pay their fares with their own debit and credit cards. This week marks the second anniversary of the tragic Japanese tsunami. Studio 51 reporter Caitlin McMurray tells us about a special event in Chicago which gives tribute to the casualties and the survivors of this disaster.
It's been 2 years since the devastating tsunami hit Japan, killing more than 20,000 people and destroying hundreds of thousands of homes. Now people are gathered to remember those who are lost, but have not been forgotten. The women's choir and the beating of the drums set the tone for Kazuna 2, The Bonds of Emotion, a temporary photo exhibit that connects Chicagoans to Japan. Many believe this exhibit is important so people don't just see the earthquake and tsunami as a history event that will be forgotten. Takeo Oyama says we can't forget what happened because many of the Eastern Japanese are still recovering from the disaster.
This Japan earthquake is not a history, but an ongoing process for the people to continue to move forward from devastation toward resurrection.
In June 2012, high school student Keigo Oharu traveled to Inagwa and Kamishi to help those affected by the tragedy. The devastation he saw when he got there seemed unreal.
There's a tree just in the middle of nowhere, standing there, just by itself. All the other buildings and trees wiped away.
Last year, there was also a remembrance for the victims. However, this year, the exhibit added a new way to connect Chicagoans with the Red String Project, based on a Japanese literary legend.
In the folkloric version of the story, 2 children wake up and they have a string binding them together, and it was symbolic that they would be bound together in destiny and in fate.
In lieu of the ancient Japanese tradition, passerbys are encouraged to take one of the 20,000 red string so they can remember those affected by the tsunami. I'm Caitlin McMurray reporting for Studio 51 News.
Thanks, Caitlin. And finally, a hole-in-one is good in golf, but one golfer in southern Illinois found himself in a giant sinkhole. 43-year-old Mark Mahal fell into the 18-foot hole after walking over a divot on the 14th fairway. It took about 20 minutes to pull him out with a rope, but luckily he walked away with only a shoulder injury. And that's your news roundup for Studio 51. I'm Jason Weeder. Back to you, Caitlin and Dominique.
Thanks, Jason. Clearly, the big story this week is the new pope and the fact he's a Jesuit. But as you may know, Loyola University is a Jesuit institution. Yet many people don't even know what Jesuit means.
Yeah, in fact, one of the top searchers on Yahoo was Jesuit Pope. Here's a closer look into this unprecedented selection with Studio 51's Katie Knuckles and a very special guest.
Thanks, guys. I'm joined with Father Charles today, Director of Music, and he spent the last 3 summers in Rome Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So this week has been huge in the world of religion. There's a new pope, which is historic no matter what. Why is this especially historic?
Well, he's also a Jesuit and a member of my religious order, and so he's the first Jesuit who's been called to be a pontiff. And also, he is from Argentina, what was, years ago called the New World, and from our hemisphere. And so I think it's an incredible thing that the church, I think really beginning really to enter the modern world. We've been in the modern world for many years, but in a sense that we've gone outside of Europe. Traditionally, that's where, and outside of that part of the world. And now to choose someone from another part of the world where this global community has now been, I think, really, this is where the future is. Yes.
And some say that the ideals of being Jesuit and being the Pope don't align.
That's true. Sometimes we've gotten into trouble. We've gotten our hands slapped, yes. We've been reprimanded and also praised.
How would these ideals not align?
I think historically, in terms of our involvement with kings of Spain and Portugal and France, many people thought that our influence was too great, and they wanted us to be eradicated. And so in 1773, we were suppressed.
And by suppression, you mean?
Our order went out of existence.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And so the Jesuits who were here in the United States became diocesan priests. And so the first Bishop of Baltimore, John Carroll, was a Jesuit. And since he was no longer a Jesuit, he was a diocesan priest and eventually became Archbishop of Baltimore. And so for about 40 years, we did not exist. And so one of the popes in the early 19th century decided that we could come back. That was time for the church to have our order again. And so in 1814, we were restored as an order in the Catholic Church, in which we will celebrate our bicentenary of that restoration next year. I think there are celebrations throughout the world, and which Loyola University here in Chicago will be participating in that celebration.
So what's the Jesuit reaction? As a Jesuit, what's your reaction to a Jesuit pope?
I was astounded. I couldn't believe it. I just sat there yesterday at my computer screen with one of my colleagues, a Jesuit. It's like I never thought that would happen, because as part of our formation as Jesuits, and it's also in our constitutions, we usually don't want to go after ecclesiastical offices. That's for our brothers in the diocesan clergy that we have to do. And so in a sense, Francis is a Jesuit and always will be a Jesuit in his heart, and we still, have him as a brother Jesuit, even though now he's been asked by the church to lead. So it's
wow.
Incredible. I think many of my brothers were very pleased and very hopeful for the future.
And he picked Pope Francis. There's no other Pope Francis.
That's right. Francis. He said Francis of Assisi. I also would like to think and hope maybe that Francis Xavier. So the first Francis who literally was asked by one of the popes to help rebuild the church. And I think that's part of why he took Francis's name, that he will help, in a sense, keep rebuilding the church in this new century. And also Francis Xavier, who was our greatest missionary saint. And so I think with those two names and those two persons combined, because Jesuits are always on a mission. And so, that mission will take us to places that we would never think that we would ever go to.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us. It's been amazing to have such an insightful speaker come and talk to us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Back to you guys at the desk.
Thanks for that fascinating report, Katie. Coming up after the break, health tips, a look at sports, and our foodie has this week's restaurant pick.
All of that after this break, and you'll definitely want to see this. This week's public service announcements are produced by Loyola's @PR students. Stay tuned.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi.
Is this the Phoenix Loyola student newspaper?
Yes.
I'm near your headquarters. Mind if I drop in?
Absolutely. Our offices are in the basement of the CFSU.
Yikes.
Where are you?
Phoenix? Arizona?
You know, becoming a part of the Phoenix isn't that difficult. It's actually quite easy. Give us a call, shoot us an email. Who knows? You might even win yourself one of these bad boys. Could change your life.
We're from WLUW Chicago Sound Alliance. You've probably never heard of us. We're pretty obscure.
We're so underground that we're broadcasting to you now live from the center of the earth, just to get the word out. #irony.
Are you always confused when your hip friends are talking about insert band name here?
Do you stand around awkwardly at basement shows while everyone else around you sways violently to the music?
Do you just want to, explore new music? Then we're your solution. Impress your friends by discovering unique music for independent minds.
Every minute of every hour of every day, WLUW can be bumping through your speakers. We're just a click away.
Welcome back. Snazzy commercials, don't you think, Dominique?
Snazzy indeed. There'll be more to come. But for now, let's talk health. While it might be tough to even think of the word spring with freezing temperatures in Chicago, Sean has our upbeat report about allergies in spring with this week's health report. Take it, Sean.
Thanks, Dominique. Despite the recent snowstorms and still freezing temperatures, Chicago has experienced a relatively mild winter, which allergists predict may lead to a longer spring allergy season in 2013. With warmer temperatures coming earlier in the year, pollens are entering the air earlier, causing an overlap of the spring allergy season with the cold and flu season. The shifting temperatures cause pollen levels to rise and fall, which has a priming effect on the immune system that worsens symptoms for individuals who suffer from spring allergies. According to the American College of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology, nearly 50 million Americans suffer from allergies. Often mistaken for a common cold, many individuals are unaware that they even have allergies. Do you find yourself often stuffed up or having breathing issues in the springtime? Congestion, sneezing, a sore throat, a runny nose, itchy eyes, and scratchy throat are some of the many symptoms of spring allergies. It is important to prepare for allergies as well as know the counts for tree, grass, weed, mold, pollen, and ragweed. There are many outlets where you can find this information. Allergist Joseph Lieja measures pollen counts every morning right out of Loyola's own Gottlieb Memorial Hospital in Melrose Park. The Gottlieb allergy count is the official allergy count for the Midwest, and you can view Lieja's reports at www.gottliebhospital.org. On a day with higher pollen counts, experts suggest avoiding the outdoors, keeping windows closed, and showering at the end of the day. As far as a preventive diet against spring allergies, vitamin C-rich foods such as broccoli and citrus fruits can help reduce allergic inflammations, while apples, onions, and garlic provide a healthy dosage of quercetin, a flavonoid which acts as an antihistamine against allergies. So if you find yourself coming down with cold-like symptoms this spring, getting an allergy test from your doctor might be a good idea. An allergy test consists of a skin or a blood test that identifies allergens and substances that leads to allergic responses. While Chicago waits for spring weather to arrive, now is the time to prepare for spring allergies. For Studio 51's Health Beat, I'm Sean Keenahan.
Sean must be crazy if he thinks this has been a mild winter.
Well, compare it to the other ones, but it's still pretty cold. Well, anyway, I'm grateful for those allergy tips. I'm looking forward to trying them. Well, there's a cloud over the United Center because both the Bulls and the Blackhawks have been struggling. Let's see what's up with Caitlin McMorray and 51 Seconds of Sports.
It seems like everyone's excited about the possible return of Derrick Rose. On Wednesday, Bulls coach Tom Thibodeau said he would let Rose play at any time he felt comfortable, even if it was in the middle of the playoffs. The Chicago Blackhawks are no longer undefeated as they lost to the Colorado Avalanche last Friday. The Blackhawks hope to break their 2-game losing streak Thursday night to the Columbus Blue Jackets. And it's a good thing preseason baseball games don't mean much. The Cubs lost 2-0 to the Colorado Rockies on Wednesday, while the White Sox lost 5-2 to the Cleveland Indians. Luckily, both teams have until April 1st to prepare for opening day. And finally, the Miami Heat has extended their winning streak to 20 games with a 98-94 win over the 76ers Wednesday night. They are the 4th NBA team to have ever accomplished this. Well, that's all we have time for, but sports superfan Stephanie Skelnick has more on the struggling Blackhawks.
The Blackhawks. Everyone in the sports world is talking about them. They've recently set an NHL record with 24 straight games with a point to start a season. And while doing that, they set numerous other records within their franchise. Of course, this grabbed the attention of fans and media across the country. Then, the inevitable happened, and they finally suffered their first regulation loss of the season, which was followed by another loss on Sunday. Going into Thursday's game against Columbus, the Hawks were on a 2-game losing streak, their first of the lockout-shortened season. Then came panic from some fans. I'm here to say, relax. Out of 26 games, the Hawks have lost 5, 3 in a shootout and 2 in regulation. The team is tired. They have some injuries. They've had 2 bad games. It happens. No team is going to be perfect all season long. On any given night, any team can win, and nothing is guaranteed. It's better they lose now than in the playoffs, because let's be honest, anything short of a Stanley Cup will be deemed a failure. If a 2-game losing streak turns into 5 or 6 games, then people can become a bit more concerned. But until then, enjoy the season and all the bumps and excitement that come with it. And remember, the regular season becomes a thing of the past once the playoffs begin. And with the amazing start the Hawks have had, the playoffs are pretty much a guarantee. For Studio 51, I'm Stephanie Skelnick, your superfan.
Thanks, superfan. Just a reminder, we want to hear from you. Email us at studio51news@gmail.com. My co-anchor Dominique is this week's foodie with an interesting pick right here in the Water Tower neighborhood.
Devon's Seafood Grill is located right off Chicago's famous Magnificent Mile on the corner of Chicago and Wabash. They are open 7 days a week for lunch and dinner and brunch on the weekends. This place is great for those who want seafood on a budget with lunch specials starting at $13. My friend and I indulged in this and had the lobster bisque soup and shrimp tempura rolls, which were both perfect to my liking, but the bisque was a tad too creamy for my companion. She had the jumbo lobster crab melt with fries, which she enjoyed, and I had the mouth-watering salmon flatbread, which was great. Our damage was only $40, and trust me, you will get full off these portions.
If you're ever downtown shopping at Chicago's Water Tower Mall, or if you're downtown Loyola's Water Tower campus, be sure to stop by Devon's Seafood Grill. You won't be disappointed. I'm Dominique Stem with Studio 51 News.
Thanks, Dominique. Looks good. I'm getting pretty hungry.
Well, I brought you some leftovers. You can have them during the break.
Ooh, thanks. Coming up, what's your bet on whether or not a casino is coming to Chicago? That's the subject of this week's Point Counterpoint.
And we'll take a look at our favorite green holiday. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the 2013 Loyola Cheer Challenge.
We're ready for the challenge.
Challenge number 1, cheering on a lifeguard.
Lifeguard, lifeguard, you're our guy. You can do it, save some lives.
Challenge number 2, cheering on a bear.
Ooh, bear, searching for some berries. Ooh, bear, you're not even scary.
You're only provoking the bear. He is getting hungry. Get out. Challenge number 3, Loyola football.
Football, football. Wait, what?
Nice. Final challenge, Loyola basketball.
Hammer basketball, we know how to do this. Feels good to be home. Ramblers, Ramblers. Ramblers, Ramblers.
If you've got spirit and can tumble, come join the Loyola cheerleading squad.
Don't worry, tryouts aren't that hard.
We'd love to have you.
Go Ramblers!
Thanks for staying with us. It's a hot issue, legalizing casinos in the gaming city of Chicago.
That's the subject of this week's Point Counterpoint with Tahara Rahman and Katie Knuckles. Tahara, Katie, take it away.
Mayor Rahm Emanuel is looking for a different route to legalize gambling in Chicago after Governor Pat Quinn shot down his proposal last week. He's now saying that he wants to, instead of sending the money towards private investors, he wants to send it towards public schools, which would be great for Chicago.
Well, I don't think it would be that great, Katie, because lottery revenues already go to Chicago public schools. And as Rahm Emanuel told the Southtown Star, only 620 million people play the lottery, and only 2.5% of that actually helps the schools.
I'm glad you brought up the revenue. Revenue's really big. Nearly $1.5 billion is made in revenues at the 10 riverboat casinos in Illinois now. In 2011, Illinois made almost $500 million in taxes. In Aurora, for example, 2011 state share tax revenue generated $47 million and a local share tax of $10.2 million.
Well, I hear you, but Chicago casinos means that casino business will be taken away from nearby suburbs such as Joliet and Elgin and even Indiana gambling houses. Also, this will require our taxpayer dollars in increased public services such as increased policing. And unless Chicago became a casino resort, according to the National Gambling Report, the casinos here would only have a limited number of games, which would only provide a limited number of jobs, and would only give a little amount of benefit.
Well, jobs is huge right now. The American Gaming Association just released a statistic saying that in the past 22 years, casinos have increased their workforce by 70%. That's huge. To have more jobs in the city of Chicago, there couldn't be anything better than that. In Illinois, in 2011, the riverboat casinos had over 7,800 employees who collectively made $272 million. And within that money, they donated numerous hours and money to charitable organizations.
Well, I'm glad they do because they need to. I feel like they do way more harm to society than good. For example, the International Journal of Tourism Research did a study that found that communities that had casinos said it brought in increased drinking in public, vandalism, prostitution, litter on the streets, suicide, and even bankruptcy. Another national report found that casinos sometimes prey on the most vulnerable populations, which include immigrants, minorities, and economically disadvantaged. Not only that, but it also harms the approximately 3.2 million American adults who are pathological gamblers, and another 1.1 million youth who are also more likely to be affected by pathological gambling.
Charity, though, is really big. In Aurora, local shares were used to fund daycare programs, at-risk youth programs, Aurora Area Tourism Council, and road projects. Their charitable and community partners included the Salvation Army, Northern Illinois Food Bank, and the Quad City African American Chamber of Commerce. Aurora's population is roughly 200,000, whereas you go see Chicago's 2.5 million. That's a lot of people, like a lot more. This could have humongous potential for the economy and bring revenues into the city that we couldn't, why would we deny that?
Well, I don't think we have time to get into more of this, but join us next week as we heat up
or cool down another controversial topic.
I'm Tahira Rahman.
And I'm Katie Knuckles. Back to you guys at the desk.
Thanks, Katie and Tahira. Point Counterpoint takes on a new issue each week, but we want to know what you think. Email us at studio51news@gmail.com, or you can tweet us at Studio51News.
Well, it's that time of year again.
Yes, it is. St. Patrick's Day. Where's your green, Dominique?
Don't really do green. But our final story this week talks about a Chicago tradition and St. Patrick's Day. It's, wait for it, the river.
It's the Chicago River. Here's Studio 51's Mary Sugden.
For over 50 years, the Chicago River has been dyed green to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. But how did this strange tradition come about? It was during the early 1960s when Chicago plumbers were working to end pollution by detecting leaks within the Chicago River. The dye they used to detect these leaks first turned the water a bright orange. However, once the boat motors turned it up, a bright green emerged. When Stephen Bailey, a Chicago plumber's business manager, learned of the dye's effect on the river, he reached out to the port director, Captain John Manley, for permission to dye the river green every St. Patrick's Day. Today, this occasion is 100% privately funded by Chicago Plumbers Union Local 130. 40 pounds of vegetable dye is used to safely dye the river for about 4 to 5 hours.
The dyeing of the Chicago River is set to take place this Saturday, March 16th at 10 a.m. Now the best place to view the dyeing is right where I'm standing. That's anywhere between the Wabash and the Columbus Bridges. Reporting from Chicago's own soon-to-be Emerald Isle, this is Mary Sugden for Studio 51 News.
So are you going to watch the parade?
I've actually never seen the river dyed green or the parade. I'm kind of ashamed after living here for 4 years. Maybe I'll go this year.
Are you kidding? You haven't seen it? You have to go.
I know. But however you celebrate, stay safe and we'll see you next week. For Studio 51, I'm Caitlin Wilson.
And I'm Dominique Stam. Have a great week.
Stop, I'm caught this